My first question is, or not so much a question, if you'd like to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do at United Way Denton.
Sure. My name is Olivia Mata Williams. I am a LMSW, a licensed master social worker. I am the Director of Education, Housing, and Workforce Initiatives at United Way of Denton County.
So, what does some of your daily job details entail?
Yeah, so I oversee two different initiative programs. One is the education and workforce side, and the other is the housing and homelessness segment. Specific for housing and homelessness, we have systems level programs that include bringing in the housing crisis response system to the county. Before this system was brought in, every nonprofit agency had their own way of intake for homeless people experiencing homelessness. The housing crisis response system essentially centralized it and allowed one kind of system to make it easy to talk to one another about what each client is, what services they're taking, what they're experiencing, without having to re-engage with the client at every single point of entry. That's a pretty major deal in terms of homelessness. And here at United Way, we have a coordinated entry specialist who not only performs this duty here for people coming in off the street, but he also helps engage at other coordinated entry specialists at agencies that primarily do direct service, and supports them with new training, or if they get new hires and new employees, he makes himself known to help out. We also have, the world of homelessness is large. So one of the other initiatives we have is a housing navigator. This particular role builds and maintains relationships with landlords specific to clients that are experiencing homelessness. And the only way to a housing navigator is through one of the referrals from a coordinated entry specialist. With the housing navigation program, they're able to house clients who have been homeless, who have evictions, who may have criminal records, and are essentially the hardest demographic to rehouse. So the housing navigation looks to find solutions to do that. The other piece that we have is the data. Leah Atkinson, who you've spoken with before, is our data specialist. And right now, all of that data that we get is specific to Denton County. And there's a data dashboard on our website that helps us with funding. Not just United Way, but it helps the county and any organization, but it helps with funding. It helps with understanding trends that are happening and any gaps that are missing. And overall, on the homelessness side, that's my world in a nutshell.
When did you first start working at United Way Denton, and how did you come into contact with the job?
Yeah, so I was actually getting my master's with the JMSW program hosted by TWU and UNT in 2020, and started as an intern January 2020. And then by October, a part-time director role had opened up, and I started as their Director of Education and Workforce. I graduated in 2021, and then in 2022, the housing world came underneath my title as well.
I was looking at the data dashboard that Leah Atkinson, I assume, created on the website.
She works on that.
And a trend that I saw over time is that the furthest back I could see info was from summer 2018, where the actively homeless in particular, the number was high. And then I noticed over time it went down a bit. And then towards the middle and the end of COVID, the pandemic, it spiked up again. and more recently it went down, but I wanted to ask if you uh, could explain the trend or the data behind the trend, or if
Yeah,
I'm incorrect.
from my understanding, the trends in homelessness are as expected. I think from 2020 on, what we're seeing are the biggest variable is the impact of the pandemic, and those ripple effects that still continue to occur, in terms of lack of affordable housing units actually available, then increased cost of living. There was an article in the Denton Record Chronicle that came out, that just talked about this today. And from that article, it said that 44% of someone's income is what's anticipated to need to afford housing in Denton. And so when you think about that curve and its ripple effects into homelessness, I think that's why everybody is talking about the upstream approach of affordable housing. And that's where the solution and the problem both live. In terms of the trends, some of the data reflects those migration trends that I think the state demographer was looking at. And when Denton County was experiencing a lot of growth, and this projected growth has been talked about for a long time, I think it happened at a faster pace than what was originally anticipated. And I think when it comes, you have your trend of the problem, and then you have potential solutions, and then you have funding. So it's a lot of variables that go into what's going to end up being successful. And I think sometimes those variables expose a few more gaps that we didn't have funding, we as a community didn't have funding to address. But it also gives us an opportunity to talk about the little successes that are still moving along the way.
What are some issues that United Way Denton has faced and currently faces in their mission?
Specific to home, what are
Like,
you?
I guess combating homelessness. What are some issues or roadblocks that you've run into?
From a nonprofit perspective, at the top of anyone's list is going to be funding. All of the grants typically that are out that we can apply for, that any nonprofit can apply for, they're very specific in what they're wanting. And typically that covers program costs, but not staff costs. And it's a slippery slope to be able to address any kind of solution, whether we're talking homelessness, workforce, childcare, without being able to have, for the nonprofit to have an opportunity to build capacity and other ways to support the modernization of the world that we live in right now. So I think those, from a nonprofit perspective, have been some barriers. I think from a systems change point of view, legislation, local, state, federal, if there's not an alignment or an agreement between those three, it makes it really challenging to navigate what solutions can arise.
And then funding for United Way Denton, is the majority of it through the Denton City Council or the Denton government?
Overall as an organization, or for homelessness in general?
I would say as an organization in general.
No. So the majority of our funding comes from workplace campaigns. That's been our bread and butter. So it's donors who give maybe $5 a paycheck, every paycheck, and have done it for a really long time. That's our bread and butter.
What are some successes that you believe United Way Denton has made in combating homelessness in the county?
I think the biggest credit that United Way gets to be part of is its collective impact model. Um, Nobody does this work alone. And for people who are in or outside of the collective impact world, they're still part of the current that helps make the systems change there. For United Way, the collective impact meant that we created and we're part of a homelessness leadership team that consists of, it's a quasi-governmental team that consists of municipality leadership, university and higher education leadership, business owners, county commissioners are on the leadership team. There's a lot of decision makers in the room who are listening and who are responding to the data and the reports being made. And a large part of that, United Way provides that what we call backbone support. So those decisions are based off of the data that we provide.
During a April 18th city council meeting, Denton city council meeting, aggressive solicitation was a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
And Danny Shaw showed a photo or a barcode with, I'll show you real quick to explain this, that people can scan to go to the barrier fund, I assume. And it says it's okay to say no to panhandlers on it. Maybe expectedly, it was a hot topic with some of the guest speakers that are public speakers, citizens later in the open session for that city council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
If you would like to expand on the intention behind this sign, or
I'm not gonna, I don't want to speak for Danny. Danny has been an amazing partner in the homelessness initiatives community and continues to back the efforts that, not her alone, but as a representative of the city, back what we're doing to solve for homelessness. The Barriers Fund. This addresses a couple of things. One, just the notion of people may not be comfortable giving dollars directly to a person who approaches them, or someone who is on the side of the road asking for money, right? But there is this middle ground of, well, can I do something, or what can I do if I do want to give to them? The Barriers Fund is a flexible fund account that was intentionally created to solve for problems that a lot of nonprofits don't have funding to do. A large portion of this goes to critical documents like regaining a state ID, obtaining a birth certificate. When someone is experiencing homelessness, you can take a person who's fleeing domestic violence. You can take someone who may have slept on their last couch at a friend's house and just really needs to make a way on their own. Well, they reduce the amount of things that they're actually carrying with them. And so they start to lose items that could be needed that people don't think about. Well, there's no funding for critical documents currently in our county, except the Barriers Fund helps to offer that. The Barriers Fund also looks to stabilize households. And this could look like someone's tried to go to CCA and get help with a rental deposit. CCA can help get them X amount of dollars and they still need a little bit more left. Then the CCA case manager can apply to the Barriers Fund and help get that difference for them. Workplace. Sometimes we've had transplants from hurricanes in other states come to Texas and say, hey, I'm working 2 jobs, but I need new boots, or I need a new work jacket, or I need some tools. A case manager can apply to the Barriers Fund to help support their efforts getting back into the workplace. Because traditionally there's not specific funds that they can go and do that. So I think the idea is fantastic. This is the Barriers Fund is considered the fund of last resort, which means they do have to work with a case manager at other nonprofit agencies first, just to make sure that they've exhausted whatever funds are there. And then after that, that case manager can apply to this fund for to help with whatever they weren't that agency wasn't able to cover.
So United Way Denton as case managers.
We do not. United Way of Denton County, with that collective impact model, partners with the nonprofit agencies that do.
Regarding the barrier fund, I personally didn't interview someone who had this opinion, but I know people in my group questioned maybe the transparency, maybe not of the barrier fund, but of like nonprofits in general.
Okay.
Is there somewhere they can go to like see where barrier fund funding goes to, or if you'd like to speak on exactly like where all the funds go?
Yeah. In terms of like where the funding goes, every month on our website we post the average amount spent and per the total people helped. And right now I need to update that for this past month, but right now it's right under $500 per household that is spent. The Barriers Fund is not it's not a fund that's just like, here, come get your rent paid. There's a maximum amount per person per year that's allocated, and so it's tracked. It's a helpful fund, but it's one that we need help with donors to be able to keep this going, especially in the wake of all the evictions happening and that the eviction money running out. This may be an alternative that can help get someone and keep someone housed. For transparency in general, for financials, we report on this monthly, and if whatever questions somebody has, they can send them to United Way.
I understand that federal funding for housing crises across the United States could be ending this year.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see the future or the near future of combating homelessness in Denton in light of this fact?
I think the emergency COVID funding is definitely ending, and that was critical in keeping everything homelessness afloat, and to try to prevent more rapid growth in numbers. I think what we go back to is our HUD actually has a lot of funding for homelessness. What makes it challenging for our county is being able to compete with our neighboring counties like Dallas and Tarrant. There was recently, last summer, a collaborative HUD opportunity, and Dallas, Tarrant, and Denton all submitted their grant request, and Dallas and Tarrant were awarded the millions of dollars, and Denton was not.
What does United Way Denton's mission mean to you?
Improving and transforming lives. I fell in love with United Way as an intern for their vastness and their depth of understanding of a person's life overall, and that their mission and that their work is oftentimes never seen out in the public. And I think my experience coming in as an intern and realizing how much work it takes to move the needle just a little bit, and United Way gets to be a part of that along with every other entity helping move that needle. is something that personally I have a great respect for. And personally, being commission driven, going home and thinking about what else can I do? How else can I bring change? Who else do I need to bring to the table and work with to get this done? United Way has just been an amazing place, culture to work for. This is my third career, and as a work culture, I love being here.
My last question is there anything you'd like to say to the audience that I did not ask you about?
I just want to share that myself being new to the homeless world in this past year, I want to share how deeply complex someone experiencing homelessness, that whole experience is complex. And I also want to stress that it's fluid. So that impact to me in learning that there is an out to homelessness, help paint that picture that it's not a one-way street in terms of there's no overall solve or there's no way out. I think quite the opposite, that there's so many moving pieces and so many hands trying to solve for all of the little parts, that those end up being big successes. And when we hear stories from case managers sharing they got someone who was experiencing homelessness for 10 years housed, it's just a reminder that all of the work that we show up for day in and day out makes a difference, even if the person outside of this world doesn't see that. I know and I recognize that everybody is knee deep, rolling up their sleeves, working as hard as they can to solve for this.
Well, I wanted to thank you for your time
Absolutely.
and answering all my questions. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.